headquarters to be in New York, procurement headquarters, probably given that we're a technology company belonging in Singapore and Asia, so that's where our head of procurement is. And he did that, for example, when he looked at research, there was no reason why research should only be done in a given country or another country. He actually looked at the talent prospects across the entire world and said, well, based on what's going to happen in the next 10 years and where the economy of competency is going to go. You see, when you're IBM, $100 billion, you never have a problem of economy of scale. But that's not the point. His point was we need to go after an economy of competency. Where is the talent going to be is what's going to drive our decisions, not what's less costly to do, because we're big enough to get economy of scale. So that's the second thing. The third and very important thing when you go to emerging markets as a growth mechanism, which IBM is very aggressive and is working out very well for us, is don't fall into the trap of defining your value proposition as a labor arbitrage or cost differential, because that's fleeting. That's going to last very, very, very little window. One of the things that we did at IBM is purposely we defined the value proposition of each one of our organizations in emerging markets to deliver value locally. And that mission is you will be the number one in the local market. Whatever we are doing, whatever competency, talent, product, or service we're actually going after, we will be the leader in the local market. When you do that, the mindset of every individual on that organization or any other part of the global organization is to provide a value proposition that can sustain on its own regardless of the cost differential. So you force all the things that we're talking about here to understand the local constraints, to understand the local market, to be able to stand on its own, and then if you take the essence of that and then you standardize that globally on the merit of the value proposition, not on the labor arbitrage that may come with that. That may be harder at the beginning to do, but that's sustainable. That can be proven quarter after quarter after quarter or year after year after year and actually makes a difference. So I say those three things are very important. You have to have the global commitment, have the global mindset. IBM took 1,000 people out of the executive ranks and said, for the next 6 months, we're taking you out of your job and we're going to send you to an emerging market to solve a community problem. Nothing related with IBM. Why are we doing that? Because we're developing global citizens that we will need to run a global company. Commitments like that. And then, second one, as I mentioned, standardize. So the way we performance manage or we define a person in any of the 160 countries we operate is exactly the same quality standards. And then the third one is your value proposition has to stand on its own in the local market.
Having a meritocratic culture, I think you're right, I think definitely helps as well, and the focus on talent management and also the commitment to develop the local market.
Exactly.
So I think that's kind of where I think I want to ask Eric a question about that, because you operate globally, and oftentimes multinationals have been kind of criticized for being very much like ethnocentric in the approach to penetrating foreign markets. They tend to kind of issue commands, everything from their quarters. Do you see in your organization also a shift towards more a diffuse kind of leadership model where you try to actually empower global units with this insight or premise that actually that's the right way to start getting more kind of best practices and ideas from these emerging markets?
Sure, and quite frankly, most big multinationals have been doing this for such a long time. I don't think that is kind of any new thing, to be honest with you. I think it's it starts with talent and it starts with the need for growth. So you use those markets years ago as kind of entry points. Now, I think the only thing that historically kind of got in the way was essentially restrictions, local restrictions in terms of foreign ownership and things like that, right? And I think that's really where the watershed has happened over the last 10 years, right? You could invest and you knew you had some security and some legal structure that was going to allow you to represent your investment and actually to compete with the locals, right? The only cases where you don't have that, then you've got people living like you see in certain places. But so I think that in any large international corporation, you've got to let people perform to the best of their skills. You've got to make sure that you win locally, as I was saying before, and so and you've got to manage for talent. We're in a huge competition. the competition to me is, the primary competition I think that any foreign or any multinational has to deal with more than anything else isn't just trying to win against the competitors, which is hard work, but it's trying to keep really good talent.
Right.
And so if you don't allow these people to kind of, stretch their wings and to fully develop and give them opportunities to blossom, you're going to lose them to your competitors.
Yeah, talking about talent, I think before I open again the floor to the audience, we are in a university, and this morning somebody said something very profound, is that maybe the biggest challenge for a developed nation like US to import ideas from developing countries is having humility. Right? Are we humble enough to say that, look, it's time for us to start looking at, a developing nation to bring, best practices in. And so my question, I guess, both to you and maybe potentially you can ask back to the audience as well, potentially is, how do we teach humility, right? Because is it something that you can learn? Because here in university, right? Because for an adult employee, it's about unlearning the mindset and learning a new way of, thinking about the world. But then you can actually mold these young kids, thinking Ajay was sitting here, right, to think differently about the world, so that they, from the get-go, realize that we have to be humble enough to take the best ideas like IBM is doing, wherever they come from. So any thought on how do we systematically, inculcate this kind of culture of openness, I guess, here? Because we claim to be the most open economy, fine. But the question is, do we have the most open mindset, and receptivity? So,
well, if I could just speak to, do we have the most open mindset?